And there's all these things around ADHD medication working for everybody. People try and buy it illegally because it just makes everyone focus more. And I think it really contributes to this idea that ADHD is not a real thing. ADHD stimulants work for everybody. If you like the medication, well, everybody does. That's why it's addictive. And I'm just here to debunk that myth completely because that is 100% not true. ADHD is a neurodevelopment condition. It is not something in your head. It is something to be taken seriously, and it's a difference in your brain. If we scanned your brain and scanned a neurotypical person's brain, they would look different because they are different.
So there's no brain scan that we can do to say whether you have ADHD or don't have ADHD.
So there is this idea out there that if you have ADHD or ADD and you take stimulants, they work in a different way because they're working on the basis of the abnormal processes that cause the ADD. So they work in a completely different way and they have different effects than they do in other people who take them. That's just not true. What is happening when people take prescription stimulants for ADD or ADHD is they're getting a much lower dose than people who would be out partying, taking methamphetamine addicts. And so they're less likely to show the hyperactivity that you get with high dose stimulants and more likely to show the effects of low dose stimulants. And low dose stimulants in people with ADHD, but also in people without ADHD and in animals, increase focused attention, and particularly attention that's focused on a single task.
So for people without ADHD, taking stimulants like Ritalin, dexamphetamine can actually slow you down, but not in a good way. Instead of slowing you down like the ADHD brain slows down and can focus, the neurotypical brain actually slows down and it does not boost performance. You end up spending a lot more time on tasks, you get less done, and you actually obsess over things that don't even matter. You may feel like you've gotten stuff done, but if you actually reflect on it, you haven't actually completed anything or you've done it to quite a lesser level.
So they're having the same effects in people with ADHD and ADD as they have in people without that diagnosis, as they have in animals.
If you give amphetamines to people who don't have ADHD and then you assign them work, people you give amphetamines to will do more work, but they're not more productive. The quality of the work actually suffers. And the funny thing between this particular study was I think it broke them into 4 groups. The people that did the best when they were given the placebo, meaning no amphetamines, and then you did their work, and then when you gave them amphetamines, their performance was degraded. They became the worst performers afterwards, even though they didn't feel that way. They actually felt like they were performing even better.
You may feel like you've gotten stuff done.
Probably because they were high on amphetamines and it feels good. But when you track the quality of the work, it decreased. So the idea that like if you just give amphetamines to everybody will like become better, I don't think is actually empirically tested anywhere. As much as it feels very counterintuitive.
They're good at getting people to do simple and repetitive and boring things and to focus on them at the expense of doing other more sort of varied activities.
Let's get back to the main question here. Can ADHD drugs really be some kind of magical performance enhancer? Well, that very idea can be annoying to people who actually have ADHD.
It's frustrating that when people do that, because it creates a stigma around a medication that many of us need just to do the basic things that everyone else does really easily. I remember the first time I was on medication, when I followed up with my psychiatrist, he asked me, like, how's it going? And I said, I folded my laundry. Like literally, that was what the win was for me with taking medication. And I don't think people understand that the medication doesn't put us above neurotypical people. It puts us with them, if that. I mean, barely that some days it feels like.
So they're having the same effects in people with ADHD and ADD as they have in people without that diagnosis, as they have in animals.
So, quick recap. Drugs to keep you awake and focused have been around for decades, and they can really help those with ADHD. But for everyone else looking for a magical brain boost and a pill, the research just doesn't back it up. And the downsides of the drugs could hurt you in the long run.
The second reason that it gets diagnosed a lot is because if you get diagnosed with ADHD and you don't actually have ADHD, it oftentimes works out in your advantage. So if I'm a college student and I want to do well in my classes and I have difficulty focusing, and even if I don't have ADHD, if I can get diagnosed with ADHD and get prescribed a stimulant, it will actually make my college life in some ways easier. It'll be easier to study. It'll be easier to get good grades. So part of the reason that I see a lot of people push for a diagnosis is because in some ways getting diagnosed with ADHD, especially if you don't have it, can lead to advantages.
And the medicines we use, like Ritalin or Adderall, they increase the availability of dopamine. Now, the problem is if you don't really have it, what you have is societally induced ADHD, the medicine will disrupt you and make you worse.